Good to you, Guyana, and welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us this week. Of course, as you see today, I'm usually pleasant. I try to be very, very pleasant as usual, but today I have an even brighter smile on because, of course, today I am starting off on somewhat of a light note, a light, pleasant note. But even though light and pleasant, it's a serious in the sense that it's important. I should not have said serious, but it's an important issue, and that is on the issue of social cohesion. Now, as you know, the APNU AFC government would have created a new ministry when they took office in May, and in that new ministry is the Ministry of Social Cohesion. Now, that ministry is preparing to host a roundtable on the 3rd of September, and I have a small group of persons who are a part of coordinating that project, and they're on with me today to tell you all about that. And you'll also hear a little more, and you'll get a reminder of what really and truly the Ministry of Social Cohesion is intended to do. Apart from that issue, I will also be having the Director of Sport, Mr. Christopher Jones. I know most of you have been asking why I haven't had this particular young person on, because I have already had most of the young persons who played a prominent role, are playing a prominent role in government currently, and who played a prominent role in the campaign for the 2015 regional and general election. So I think he's probably one of the only youths I've missed, so he'll be on a little later on in the program. But as we begin today, let's talk about social cohesion. And I introduce to you my guests. The first time, I'm going to be a little biased today, so Alicia will have to forgive me. The first time on this program is Miss Roxanne Myers. Now, Roxanne Myers is the program coordinator of the roundtable that is going to be held on the 3rd of September, and she's also a coordinator in the Ministry of Social Cohesion, so she can tell you what that's all about. Miss Myers, welcome to you.
Thank you, Malika, and thank you, Guyana, for tuning in.
Okay.
And it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon.
And it's a pleasure having you. And of course, welcome back to Madam Alicia. Alicia
Hello, Malika.
Alicia is also playing a major role in the roundtable that's coming up on the 3rd of September. She will be the moderator for the activities and event on the actual day. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, and I trust that social cohesion is treating you very well.
Yes, very well indeed.
All right, let's get to the point, to the more serious business of it. First of all, Ms. Myers, a few weeks ago, I would have had the pleasure to have the Minister of Social Cohesion on this program, and she did a wonderful job about highlighting to the public what social cohesion is, what the ministry is all about. But of course, as I said, that would have been a few weeks ago. The public, this ministry is new to the public, so they need a refresher. So tell us, what really is the ministry designed to do, and what are some of the things the activities that you would have already started in the Ministry of Social Cohesion?
Okay, yeah, well, social cohesion, from our perspective, is about participation. It's about inclusion of the diverse communities in our country. Whether we're in the urban center, the hinterland, the rural space, it's about inclusion of all people that are diverse, including our people who are differently abled, to include them in our policy making, in our programs and projects, to include civil society in helping government to chart its own programs and projects that they'll be implementing. So the ministry is also established to address equality.
Okay.
So the issues of equality will engage the ministry's attention, and as well as our ethnic relations. I think that most people will agree that the 2015 May 11th elections shored up the challenges that we have with ethnic division, especially when we look in, for those of us who are in social media. And we saw some grave comments, some depraved comments, and I think it's a great opportunity that His Excellency the President has established such a ministry that will seek to address some of those challenges among us, and that we as people will come together, we will unite over the things that we have in common, and try to address some of the things that keep us divided. Okay. So that's the basic thrust of the ministry. In terms of what we've done so far, we have thought that we couldn't sit in a boardroom and design a program for the five-year program for the ministry, maybe unlike other ministries. But this particular ministry needed to hear from the people of Guyana. And so that's the whole thrust of the roundtable that's planned for September 3rd.
Okay.
But and what we started to do in preparation for that roundtable is to reach out to communities and to key stakeholders in the country. So we've done 3 preparatory meetings to the roundtable, and in which we invited civil society members and related ministries like social protection, public security, Ministry of Communities, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs to help us plan the roundtable and how it should roll out and design it. And then the other element to the outreach that we've done so far is to visit regions. So we've gone to 4 of our 10 regions, and after the roundtable, we'll go to the remaining 6. So we've gone to regions 3, regions 5, 6, and 10. So the minister has engaged in sensitization and regional outreaches to those communities. And it has been an interesting, warm, great learning experience to hear from people and what their thoughts are and their recommendations are about how we could address equality and our ethnic relations challenge.
Before we speak about the roundtable day that's coming up on September 3rd of itself, before we get to that, how receptive, because you did say that you reached out to stakeholders, civil society and so on, you talked about the various regions and the fact that they're putting their ideas with you. How receptive have they been? And then I know there may be some persons who would be still skeptical. Again, people still want to know what social cohesion is all about. How do you find them receiving this whole, not just the ministry, but the entire process of promoting social cohesion?
Many people are very, very interested in this. I mean, of course, when you go to communities, you'll hear all the challenges that the communities have. And some of them are not directly interrelational problems, but they contribute to the feelings of neglect or feelings of being marginalized or discriminated against. So 2 communities living side by side, one has a new road, the other doesn't have. The issue is road and infrastructure, but it contributes to how people unite and the harmony that exists within those communities. So we heard a lot of that. In terms of reception, for the preparatory meetings, the first and second, we had over 65 organizations represented with those that we spoke with. Yesterday we had a final meeting and maybe over 50 people attended that meeting yesterday. In terms of the regional outreaches, I have to say we've reached over 300 people. And again, social cohesion is a process. We don't expect that in the first meeting all the people living in the community are going to come out or to be even enthused or armored, by the ministry. But we think that there's a great opportunity to grow and that more and more people will come around. And as we begin to have a program post-roundtable and post-budget the debate, the budgets, then we'll have more doing in communities and then people will join in and cooperate and work on community development.
Okay. Alicia, you are one of the young persons in society who you've not only spoken out on the issue of uniting and breaking the ethnic barriers and so on, but your actions, the way that you communicate with people and socialize with people, show that you are for social cohesion and getting rid of this ethnicity issue that we seem to have. Since the formation of this new ministry and the work that you ladies have been doing, how do you find, and this is specifically to young people, are they receptive? Do they understand what the ministry and what the government is really trying to do?
I think Roxanne we were trying to get there, but I noticed during the election period, social media, as you mentioned, played a key role in sensitizing young people. And I think if we were to really go on a social media campaign as it relates to what social cohesion is about and putting the message out there, sensitizing, then they'll be able to better understand, okay, well, what is the purpose of this ministry and how it's going to work together with the other ministries to foster greater integration.
And break those ethnic barriers.
Yes.
All right, ladies, let's now get to the round table of itself. Yes, you've said a lot about the intention, social cohesion, and all of that. Let's talk specifically about this round table coming up. What are the objectives? Is this the first and the last, I should say, because we all know it's the first. Would this be the last of its kind, and programs similar to that to push and promote social cohesion?
Right, but this particular roundtable is designed to help us come up with a framework for the ministry. What are the things that the ministry will work on? That's intended to do that over the next 5 years. And then from that conversation on the 3rd, then we'll look at action planning. And so we want to hear from people, and then we'll craft an action plan for the next 5 years. So it's not just a conversation about what are the challenges, but it's intended to bring recommendations, because we don't think we have it all. We think that there are many people out in the public that have great ideas, creative ideas, young people that we can hear from them and work with that. So to include people's own ideas about how we change Guyana. And we know that it probably wouldn't be in 5 years, but we want to start, and we think by the whole participatory and inclusive process will get us to that place.
Have you gotten enough publicity, feedback, media, public in general, in terms of preparation for the roundtable?
What we started to do was to issue personal invitations. We've also have a call out for people to register. It will be on radio from Monday, so they'll know where to get a registration form and just to register to come to the conference if they are interested. And if there's something that they'd like to talk about. And for most of the major stakeholders, civil society groups, youth groups, faith-based organizations, cultural groups, we have been engaging them already in preparing and planning for the meeting on September 3rd. But I'm sure we haven't reached all of them, right? So if any person is out there and they'd like to meet, we'll give our details at the end of the program so they can contact us.
Ms. Myers, let me just throw this one at you. It might be a little difficult, and viewers, of course, I know some of you are very good at misreading and misleading. I think this really is a valid question. Has there been any specific effort made to ensure that on that day, I don't know if it's possible, but on that day you see it with the optics and everything, we get an ethnic balance? Amerindians, Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese. Was anything, this is a learning process. I don't know if anybody thought of it, but was anything done in terms of strategically inviting people to ensure on that day we don't see one ethnic race overpowering the other,
Yeah, as far as the representativeness of the meeting on the 3rd, it has not escaped us at all. What we have done, apart from the civil groups that we've talked to, and that's mostly urban-based, and some of the regional outreaches that we've had, we have invited each region, all 10 regions, to nominate participants for the meeting. And in those invitations, we've asked for representation by age, by ableness, by geographic location, by gender, and what else did we include there? I don't think there's anything else left. But so we've asked for that kind of representation. Okay. Of course, sometimes asking for one thing and getting it is two different things. Understood. But that has not escaped us. So we will be sponsoring participants from all of the 10 regions, including from region 9 as far as Mabaruma. Not Mabaruma, it's not region 9. Region 1 and 9, Letem, so on. So, there might not be hundreds of people because we have space limitation at the Otachang Convention Center, but we do strive for regional representation, as well as we're looking for the plans to be regional specific. So the recommendations, we know that it's not social cohesion issues in Region 4 may be different to those that exist in Region 9
Okay.
and those that exist in Region 10. So we're looking for region-specific recommendations. So that's the trust of bringing people from all the regions to the meeting.
All right, understood. Before I go to Alicia on what will happen on the actual day of the event, of course, you did mention the Artichoke Convention Center, but just to remind people where, when, and of course time of the roundtable.
Right. So we start the registration process at at 8 a.m. and the actual program starts at 9. We expect to have, and Alicia will go to that, who is going to be there. So it's the Artichoke Convention Center, Liliendal, and it's at 8 in the morning.
Okay.
And we are encouraging people to come 15 minutes ahead of time for the meeting.
Okay, Alicia now, the other details of, you're the hands-on woman on this. Yes, the other details of what will actually happen during this roundtable.
Okay, well, first of all, I'll be the moderator.
Yes, ma'am.
Roxanne. And I'm just going to give you a rundown of the actual day. We're going to start off with a cultural exposition, which will basically encompass dances, drumming, music, plays, incorporating the different races and cultures that we have in Guyana. I think we'll be using children. I'm not sure on the specifics of the actual exposition, but certainly you'll get a bit of everything from each of the 6 peoples being displayed.
Okay.
Then we will have welcoming remarks by the Honorable Minister of Social Cohesion. And then we have some special invitees who will give key remarks. We have our very own, I must mention him first. I'm a big fan of him. Roxanne always smiles. Sir Sridhar Ramphal, who's the former Commonwealth General Secretary. And we have the UN Resident Coordinator, Ms. Hadija Musa, the British High Commissioner, Mr. Gregory Quinn, and the current Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Ms. Dr. Josephine Ojiambo.
Okay.
So they'll be giving their key remarks. Then we have His Excellency, who will be giving remarks. And then the lovely Roxanne, who is the program coordinator, she'll be starting off the session on the various thematic areas. Yes. And then we have some national experts who will be focusing on the different themes. And then the afternoon is basically, they have plenary discussions that will be going on. And to close, I believe we're looking at having the Prime Minister.
Okay, close off the session.
Yes, so essentially that's it. As it relates to the different areas that we'll be looking at, thematic areas that Roxanne will elaborate.
Okay, I know she probably won't want to reveal too much now because the idea is to get people to go.
Maybe she can give you a
snippet. Even before she gives me a snippet of that. It is often a concern, not only to myself, but many people in our society, that we have these committees, these round tables, these conferences, and this is not to pull them down by any means. But at the end of it, you hear, even though you have outlined the intentions, objectives, and plans and so on, but at the end of these committees, it died down. Maybe till September 2016, and then you hear the Ministry of Social Cohesion presents the second roundtable. Are there specific plans in place to get feedback from the public, the people who attended, after you would have had the roundtable?
Yeah. Right, brilliant idea. What we've had so far in the preparatory meetings is a discussion about how civil society and how citizens can remain engaged with the ministry throughout the 5-year. And the other issue that has come up is how do we have an interagency collaboration? Because what we've heard in the field so far, a number of the issues fall within the purview of other ministries, like social protection, gender-based violence, mental illness, alcoholism. Some fall within public security, crime or fear of crime. That's public security issue. So to find a way that we have an interagency collaboration to address those things that are related to social cohesion. And then also the mechanism that we'll use going forward is a subject of discussion at the round table for the role that civil society sees for itself. We don't envisage that civil society will just come give us their recommendations and they walk away, and as you say, come next 2 years or whatever. We'd like to engage them as partners in social cohesion, implementation over the next 5 years. So their role is core to implementation and core to monitoring what we do and how we do it. I think more than ever, social cohesion focuses on a process of engagement, and sometimes we probably wouldn't be able to measure national unity, we wouldn't be able to measure belonging to country, but we can talk about the process of how we engaged each other, how we listened, how we give feedback, how we communicated. So those are the things that the ministry hopes to model, more than just give rhetoric on. Yeah.
Okay. Before I finally have to let you ladies go, because we have the director of sport waiting, and I know everyone wants to hear from the director of sport about what he's doing and all of that. Before I finally let you ladies go, is there anything that you would probably, because Alicia did talk about the type of presentation that you would be having, is there anything that you would probably want the public to get what they can expect, apart from the rundown that Alicia gave? What are they going to benefit in terms of probably the presentations that they're going to hear and so on?
Right, so what we envisage that this would be, it would be a learning experience, right, for the ministry and for those who participate. We have a lineup of international speakers, including His Excellency President Granger, but we also have a core element in the afternoon session about listening to the people. So that we'll have smaller groups, like 10 groups of all the people that come to the meeting. We'll have 10 small groups, so they get a chance to speak in those small groups around thematic areas. And some of those areas include economic equality, social equality, our ethnic relations and politics. We also talk about political participation, the way citizens engage, whether through its local government or through its MPs and governance. And we also talk about community safety and security. So those are the themes that we have, and we'll have for each one of the themes, we'll have 2 groups. So people will be in those small groups based on their interests. You can opt into the group. You can select which group you'd like to go to discuss. And then we'll hear back in the big group, the plenary. We'll hear back from what groups have said.
You talked about international, a list of international persons lined up. Of course, Alicia talked about Sir Sridhat Ramphal. I must push this in before I let you go. This round table, did you have to, and did you receive international support in terms of monetary support? Because these things, of course, cost money.
Oh, yeah. We couldn't do this round table without the support of the UNDP, and in particular our appreciation to Ms. Musa and Mr. Trevor Ben, and also to the British who have partnered with us, the British High Commission and UK Aid. They are sponsoring in large part the round table and what will happen there.
Okay, ladies, thank you very much for being here.
Malika.
It is so unfortunate that I have to let you go to bring on a
Well,
meal,
we'll be
but
back.
if I don't do that, they will say I'm not balanced.
We'll be
Yes,
back.
and I know the public would appreciate you coming back to hear what happened, how it went, and what would be the way forward, and some of the things that you would have discovered during that roundtable. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you to the public for listening.
Okay.
And thanks to Chris's audience for staying tuned.
Of course, viewers, this is Face of the Nation. I have been chatting with Ms. Roxanne Myers and, of course, Alicia Rupnarayan. And, of course, they have major roles in the roundtable coming up on the 3rd of September. As we get closer to that date, I will remind you, I'll even try to get some clips just to prep you up and give you a reminder, not only to promote that roundtable that is very, very important to us in social cohesion, but also to remind you about what the Ministry of Social Cohesion is all about. Coming up after this quick break, I'll have the Director of Sport, Mr. Chris Jones. Stay tuned.
We'll be back.
Of course, viewers, this is Face of the Nation. I have been chatting with Ms. Roxanne Myers and, of course, Alicia Rupnarayan. And, of course, they have major roles in the roundtable coming up on the 3rd of September. As we get closer to that date, I will remind you, I'll even try to get some clips just to prep you up and give you a reminder, not only to promote that roundtable that is very, very important to us in social cohesion, but also to remind you about what the Ministry of Social Cohesion is all about. Coming up after this quick break, I'll have the Director of Sport, Mr. Chris Jones. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Facing the Nation, of course. Thanks for staying tuned. And those of you who are now joining us, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you missed a great lot from two lovely ladies who were here talking about the Ministry of Social Cohesion and a roundtable that's coming up on the 3rd of September. And I will continue to tell you about that event that's coming up as we go forward. As you know, social cohesion, breaking ethnic barriers, all barriers when it comes to our people, is very, very important to our current government. So I'll try my best to continue to promote social cohesion on this program. I also have, I might want to describe it as a treat, because these days when I open up the phone lines, I've had people tell me it's like Christmas when I open up the phone lines, because I no longer do it every week, of course, because you know the dynamics and so on of this program would have changed since APNU AFC was escalated to governmental office, governmental status. So I will definitely open up the phone lines today. I've been granted permission by no other than Mr. Christopher Jones, because he's willing to take some of those questions that you may be having out there about the youth and about sport. Chris Jones, as you know, is the director of sport. Apart from that, you know Chris Jones from the Guyana Youth and Student Movement, from the People's National Congress, from a Partnership for National Unity. If I continue to talk about all the things that he would have been involved in the past, we wouldn't get to the actual discussion with him. So we're going to talk for a bit, and then I will open up the phone lines for you to call and pose your questions to Chris Jones. And I will ask you, I will plead with you, please keep your questions today specific to the sports sector and to youth. He certainly will answer those questions that you may have. Christopher Jones, welcome. And of course, this is the first time we're speaking publicly since you became the director of sport. So congratulations, sir. And our youths, we're very, very proud of you.
Thank you very much, Malika.
All right. Good to have you on. You have been busy. We're watching the news. We're reading the newspapers. We're seeing you online. You're everywhere. How has it been for Chris Jones? Because this is a new experience for you. How has it been for Chris Jones thus far in it's no longer ministry, but in the sports sector?
Right. Well, it has been very exciting. One, to meet with the various association, the various athletes and so forth, to learn about their achievements, and of course the various clubs and the association, some difficulties, some challenges that they would have experienced and are experiencing at present. And of course, this is with a view of changing this, put a mechanism in place, policy guideline in place that would alleviate some of the difficulties and the challenges that they would have, so that they can continue to be ambassadors, to take the golden arrowhead abroad and represent our country well, as they have been doing with limited support in the past.
In talking about going abroad and representing our country well, that will also be breaking down a certain barrier. And coincidentally, earlier on this program, we were talking about social cohesion. Now, what role can sport play in that, and how much involved will you be in terms of helping the sports sector to contribute to what government wants to do in terms of promoting social cohesion?
Well, you know, Malika, sport play a major role in bringing about social cohesion. And of course, is with this view, there are two ministries that I intend to work very close with. And that is, of course, the Ministry of Social Cohesion, as well as the Ministry of Tourism. Because, you know, within sport, it's all about the game. It's not about the ethnic group that participates in the event. Take, for example, last Sunday, I was privileged to be part of the Guyana Cup horse race meet in Berbice. And of course, at that event, you had over 10,000 persons of various ethnic makeup. And it was all about the sport, because they laugh together, they celebrate when their horse that they would have been rooting for win and so forth. So you see within sport as it's alone, the cohesion is there, the bonds are being built and so forth. I saw persons exchanging friendly hug after their horse would have won and so forth. And it's of different ethnic groups. So with that in mind, with that view, and the fact that sport plays a major role in bringing about the cohesion, I would want to work very closely with the Ministry of Social Cohesion to ensure that we continue to forge those relationships amongst our people.
In talking about ministry, bringing up ministry, and unfortunately I have to throw Chris in the hot seat right now. Chris, you have a lot of supporters, fans, if you want to call them that. Immediately after APNU AFC took office, the fact is, a lot of young persons took umbrage, took offense that there was no ministry of sport and youth. Let's put culture on the side for now, but no ministry of sport, no ministry of youth. People were even touting Chris Jones should have been heading that, even though you're now heading basically the sports sector and so on. What would you say to young people who are still somewhat a bit thrown off, put off by the fact that there is not a specific ministry to address youth and there is no sport ministry, so to speak?
I would say to them that, look, the work that I see that the Department of Sport has to do in itself could be considered ministry. So perhaps you could even refer to Minister of Sport because the work is that much. The fact that the two ministries are now merged, it's very important because, as you note, this administration, we view sport being critical in the school curriculum. And by virtue of having the two ministries together, it aids in that process. For example, my department now has a responsibility of identifying coaches of various disciplines and to work with those departments such as Allied Arts to put together a proposal that we can be used in the school curriculum, and we submit those to our subject minister of education. Once it's agreed to, the two ministries that are now one, because of the expertise and the personnel that we have between the two, we can better able to have the sports in the school curriculum. So it's a plus that the two, but I note the expectations of our young people during the campaign period. But of course, the fact that I'm here, you're here, we're here, and we will continue to work with our government to ensure that youth participation at the various level continues. We just had young Alicia Rupnarayan, she's there as well too. So we're here.
Okay. All right. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is Facing the Nation. I am now chatting with the Director of Sport, Mr. Christopher Jones. I did promise earlier that I would open up the phone lines, and what I'll do, I'll just open up the phone line so you can call in between our conversation, because I always say I don't have all the ideas, I don't have all the questions, I don't have all the answers. So you may have burning questions you want to ask that I may not have thought about. So the phone lines are now open. You can call and pose your questions to Mr. Jones. Remember the rules. Turn the volumes of your television set down. Of course, be respectful. Try to be as brief as you possibly can. And the lines are now open. And today, please stick to either youth or sport. Now, well, I should take a break from Chris because I'm already getting a call. Caller, are you there? Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
About support. First of all, let me say I would like to recognize Michael Paris Day and all the Olympic medals.
Michael Paris.
Michael Paris, who won bronze medal in 1980, celebrating 35 years anniversary on the 6th of August. I was not remembered by anyone. I would like for he took the golden hurricane, stand proud. I would just like to for the government now to recognize sports.
Okay, thank you. Chris, the caller raised an important issue there. Even apart from Michael Paris, the person she mentioned, what measures are there in place? Can you help to put in place or to initiate to ensure that these past players and upcoming players are recognized and are promoted?
All right, let me say this, and perhaps this will help give some insight in terms of the changes that are about to be had in the National Sports Commission. As persons should be aware, or for those who are not aware, the Department of Sport is essentially governed by a board of commissioners, and that's how we make up the National Sports Commission. What I found that is lacking or absent is a database of which the various associations are listed, in which the various disciplines are listed, in which the various athletes are listed. With that absence, there's absolutely no information about history in terms of our athletes who would have gone before us, in terms of what they did. There's absolutely nothing. You can't find anything. So with the policy guideline that we're setting in place as well for the National Sports Commission is to have such a database set up. And of course, this will be twinned with a website so that all and sundry can be able to go to a National Sports Commission website, click on any of the discipline, you will see the current athletes that we have, and also you will see a history of athletes who would have served Guyana and what their achievements would have been as way back as we can get the data, that information made available. In fact, the Mr. Paris that she mentioned, just I think it's 2 days ago, we were actually in discussion and the very name came up, and somebody, one of the persons was actually informing me about his achievements and so forth. And that is what I'm saying is that it's sad that our current athletes can't look at someone who went before them and even honor them. Because, in fact, that too, because, we have the award program as well, and some of the athletes who would have served Guyana before have never been awarded in any way or recognized for their achievements. And that too is why we have to have this sort of data set up so we can acknowledge and recognize their accomplishments and the achievement that they've done for Guyana.
All right. While we're waiting on some of those calls to continue to come in, if we're going to promote sport in Guyana and we're going to bring it to a standard that it has not been at in the last decade or so, one of the things we have to look at is our parks, our playgrounds, our cricket fields, our football grounds. I know this, at this moment, this may fall under the Ministry of Communities, but as Director of Sport, how will you be working along with the Ministry of Communities to ensure that we develop these parks and playgrounds and fields and stadiums and so on?
All right. I would want to say this off the bat, that we recognize that the Ministry of Communities has a role to play in terms of community space. But you see, as a Department of Sports, we are specific. In terms of if we're setting an area for playing purposes, there are regulation size in terms of size of the court and expectations and so forth. So our role and responsibility is somewhat similar but different from the Ministry of Cohesion, because essentially, it's not cohesion rather, communities. Because essentially they will look for a playing space, park benches, and so forth, but we will cater specifically for sport, and of course there are regulations. As you know, currently government adopted the Community Ground Enhancement Fund, a project in which every year some $300 million is made available to the country, and communities need only to submit a request, a proposal of what they intend to do on their playing area that they have, and up to $1 million can be had for that objective. I've since spoken with the Permanent Secretary as well as Minister with the view of changing that policy, because I recognize that $1 million to do any infrastructure work on a community ground is insufficient.
And this is on one community ground.
And this is on one community ground. And note that if you're actually speaking about development of sport, you have to move beyond a playground, as in a plot of land surrounded by a fence that people go run ever so often. Is that we got to move to multi-purpose centers and so forth. So in the communities, I am hopeful that by next year, if that policy can be changed, that we can provide more than $1 million, perhaps up to $5 or $6 million, with guidance from the National Sports Commission, because we will have essentially a template of what is expected, so that if you're going to rehabilitate a ground, it must be regulation size. We are hoping that these grounds can now have lights, because important to note that community grounds are utilized between the hours of 3 to 10 to 11 o'clock at night. And unless you have, if you don't have lights, then you're making absolutely no sense. And outside of our athletes utilizing that space between 3 to about 8 o'clock at evening, it is important to us as a nation to encourage healthy lifestyle. So those parents who get home from work late at night, you don't have any time between 4:30 in the afternoon to 8 because you're assisting your child with school work and you're doing house chore. But you can get out of your house perhaps at 9 o'clock at the night and do a quick half of an hour run around a lap, because the space is there, the lights is there, so you're secure and so forth. Because a part of the healthy lifestyle, we encourage persons to have at least 30 minutes of exercise per day. So all of this is in keeping with our ultimate objective, in which we want to have a healthy nation, to provide space for our young people that they can go and learn a sport rather than liming, and of course to have our facilities secured, that person don't have to fear anything.
You said 30 minutes of exercise a day. I may have to turn one of our Face in the Nation programs a day into a semi-exercise program and have the sport director come back and let's see if he is committed to exercising for 30 minutes per day. Caller, are you there? I know he's about to defend himself, but yes, caller.
I would very much like to involve the director we have a multi-purpose building on the east bank of Essequibo. Grove is the village name. This was constructed a few years back,
Yes.
and no activity is being carried out there. Presently, a fence is falling down. The building just keeps deteriorating. All that it was done, it was built and locked there.
Okay. All right.
Very much like so, the director of sports, so investigate or check and see if something can be up and running for the youth in this area.
Okay.
Very well.
It's in Purica. Grove is a small village in Purica. It is Grove Multipurpose Center.
Very well.
That is the name of the building.
Very
All
well.
right. Thank you very much, caller.
All right. Two notes. One, when I spoke about multi-purpose centers, not the building that
Yes.
are currently, but multi-purpose center in which will cater for several disciplines. On the note that the caller spoke about in terms of the multi-center, the building, I note that throughout the country there was this Youth Choice Initiative program in which I think former government member had a responsibility, Mr. Odinga Lubumba, and several of these buildings have been erected throughout the country, and indeed, as the caller rightfully said, they are not utilized. I note that the advisor on youth, Mr. Aubrey Norton, has submitted a proposal to government in which he wants to utilize those same facilities. I note as well the PYARG, the President Youth Award, Republic of Guyana, Mr. Astel Collins as well has submitted a proposal to utilize those buildings. So we're very hopeful in the very near future between those two entities that those multipurpose centers that have been built would be put into use that they were initially designed
Intended
for.
for. Okay.
Yeah.
Caller, welcome.
Welcome, good afternoon.
Hello, sir.
I want to say good day to Mr. Jones.
Good day.
I want to congratulate you on your position.
Thank you.
That you're speaking up. Last parliament when you were talking a lot about sports, and I can see that passion still with you. So I just want to give congratulations to you, and I say that I know that you're going to do good in that, in that department. One of the things I also want to hear talking about the ground. Now I am just trying to find out. I know that maybe everything can't do at one time, but I want to know whether you got a crane on the west coast of them or a crane. The village of Korean, we have in a ground, have no light to see, like there's a set of things that is not so of fear, with our ground. So I guess maybe we'll consider, at this time, what we could be doing maybe next year or wherever. I don't know what time, but I hope that will be part of our, your priority. So because we need it. You don't have a light, you don't have the ground, there's no kind of ground reading. So that is my observation, and recommend that to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
All right, but for the benefit of the persons out there, because I know not only the ministry, permanent secretary, we would have published in the daily newspapers a guideline in terms of guide people. This is what is needed to be had in terms of persons accessing the $1 million grant. If you're residing in a community and there's a community ground, the community ground must have some sort of a management team in place. The management team has the responsibility to go and look and do a needs assessment, what needs to be done on the ground, fence, lights, rolling, and so forth. And they have to get a detailed budget that will be prepared by a contractor, and that contractor submits that detailed budget to them. They will then have to pass this through their NDCs. In the absence of the NDC, there's the municipality. In the absence of the municipality, there's the RDC. They pass it through that. Those entities will acknowledge that this committee is in existence. They will stamp off on this, and they will send this to the permanent secretary, Mr. Alfred King. After the budget would have been approved, a committee sits. We review these proposals that have been submitted, and the requests would either be granted or put on hold for next year. So if they have not done so this time around, next year they can take advantage of it.
Okay. All right. Chris, even before I go back to the phone lines, not sure how many more calls I can take. It would be criminal of me to have you on this program and not talk about or not ask you to talk about the gymnasium. I know sometime last year, I think it was, when you were a member of
Sports hall.
Pardon?
The sports hall.
The sports hall, yes. And he's smiling, so he has information at. I know last year when you were a member of the 10th Parliament, you raised the big issue about what was happening about the sports hall. A certain public official, a former official in the then government, was even given a name because of some of the very distasteful things that were happening there at the sports hall. Is it now in a state, or are you preparing to put it in a state where we can be proud of?
Definitely yes, and just for the benefit of the persons who are aware of the incident last year, we will be absolutely no slaughtering of any goat would be done at any of our sporting facilities. With that being said, as you know, the sports hall, the gymnasium, and these facilities have been built for a number of years, and it catered for then, but now we're at a different stage, and of course climate change and all of that. Some of the associations and clubs and people who utilize those facilities would have raised with me that the difficulties that I have there is the heat. So we're now revisiting in terms of extractor fans or what could be had to make that environment much more cooler so that persons can be permitted to play there longer.
Okay, all right. We'll take our final call now, and then I'll have to begin to wrap up. Yes, caller?
Yes, I'm in Safari,
Yes.
like Plum Park, and there's no play field here.
No play field?
No, so
Okay.
what could the minister say about this?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, caller.
All right, great. Well, you see, on that note, and this is where Minister Ronald Bulkan
Comes
and the
in.
Ministry of Communities will have to be applauded, is that most, if not all, of the housing schemes that would have been built in the previous admin period, is that they were built without focusing on ensuring that recreational space, playing field area are erected in them. So areas like Plum Park, Sophia, is like one of them, is that all of the space would have been utilized for housing purposes. And I even note that there are even some play areas that persons actually use to erect housing and so forth. That essentially, I mean, if the space is not there, unfortunately, with the Plum Park people will have to go to a nearby community unless someone or a few persons are willing to give up their houses for that.
Chris, I feel as though we've gotten a lot out of this discussion. I can carry on for another half hour, but I don't have the airtime, and you don't have the time either. But in just about a minute and a half, again, as I said in the beginning of this discussion, this is a new post to you and so on. You're still feeling, you're doing a wonderful job at it. Of course, this is in the public domain. This is not just me being good to a friend. How have the different groups, young people of themselves, facility managers and so on, even the private sector, how have they thus far received you as the new head of sport?
I have to say fairly well. Not boasted about it. I mean, from some of the associations and clubs that I met, they would have indicated it's a breath of fresh air. And that too, I mean, it is sad because essentially the National Sports Commission, the Office of the Director of Sports has a responsibility, a unique and wonderful opportunity to ensure that the various associations and clubs that are doing the work out there, that you lend support to them. It is not a difficult task. It's just a matter of spending a few minutes with them, sitting, listening to them, and taking their issues further with a view of getting it resolved. You note as well too, Malika, we don't have all of the facilities that we need in Guyana. And of course, one of my vision, and of course I would have shared this with my subject ministers, is that within the next 3 years to see the establishment of multi-purpose centers across the length and breadth of the country. The pilot project for this will be the gymnasium. We would have already met with the consultants. They are already drawn up plans which will cater for several disciplines. For example, the gymnasium, when that is completed, will cater for lawn tennis, basketball court, hockey, just to name a few. All of this will be shared with the public. In closing with that is that you cannot move forward in terms of sport without having a plan. And as you know, that Ghana had prepared a draft sport policy, and that policy has not seen the light of day. But of course, it's a few years dated. So one of the move by the National Sports Commission is to revisit that draft document with the association, ensure that they have an input in it with a view of bringing forward a national sports policy.
Wonderful. All right, Chris, we are definitely going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for being a part of this program. And yeah, you're no stranger, and I'm definitely going to demand and bully my way so that you can come back. Viewers, if you're now joining us, unfortunately, you've missed a wonderful program, a light but a very important program today. I was just chatting with the Director of Sport, Mr. Christopher Jones. You know him from all his other past activities, portfolios, and so on. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for calling in. Thanks to the viewers. Thank you to the callers. I always urge you, be good Guyanese citizens and take care of yourselves. And of course, join me again next time. Goodbye.